What if you could start a real local business without renting a store, hiring a big team, or buying thousands of dollars of inventory? That's one reason pressure washing keeps getting attention. But there's a catch. A pressure washer alone does not make you a business owner. You need equipment, transportation, insurance, customers, a legal setup, and a plan for what happens to the dirty water. And depending on where you live, the rules can be very different. So today let's break down what it can actually take to start a pressure washing business in the USA and the UK. And by the end, you'll have a much better idea of whether this is genuinely affordable or just another internet business that looks easier than it really is. Let's start with the USA. A lean pressure washing setup can potentially start in the low thousands of dollars. Current business guides commonly put basic startup costs around $2,000 to $6,000 before adding a work vehicle if you don't already have one. That money can go toward the pressure washer, hoses, surface cleaner, nozzles, cleaning supplies, safety equipment, insurance, registration, basic marketing and software. And here's something beginners often get wrong. They think the most expensive machine is automatically the best investment. Not necessarily. If you're starting solo, you want equipment that can handle the jobs you actually plan to sell. Driveways, patios, sidewalks, fences, and exterior cleaning can require different tools and techniques. So instead of spending everything on equipment on day one, build a setup around your first service menu. That keeps your cash available for something even more important: getting customers. Because a garage full of expensive equipment with no bookings, that isn't a business. That's an expensive hobby. And before you take your first paid job in the US, you also need to check your local requirements. Business licensing can depend on your state, county, and city. Some locations may also have rules around contractor licensing, sales tax, wastewater, or the specific services you offer. If your business structure requires an EIN, the IRS provides that federal tax ID directly, and the application is free. So don't pay some random website for something you can get from the IRS. The exact legal checklist depends on your location, and that's important, because saying every pressure washing business needs exactly the same license would simply be wrong. Let's move across the Atlantic, the UK. At first glance, the business looks almost identical. You have a pressure washer, you have hoses and cleaning equipment, you have a vehicle, you find customers, you clean their property, and you get paid. Simple, right? Well, not quite. The biggest thing I want you to understand is that wastewater matters. If your cleaning process creates contaminated or trade wastewater, you cannot just assume you can send it wherever you want. In England, government guidance says businesses producing contaminated water need to prevent pollution. Depending on what you're discharging and where it goes, you may need consent from the sewerage undertaker or an environmental permit. And surface water drains are especially important because they can discharge directly into the environment. So before you start spraying driveways all over town, learn how your local drainage and wastewater rules work. That one step could save you a very expensive headache later. Now, what about the money? UK startup costs vary heavily depending on whether you already own a suitable van, whether you buy new or used equipment, what services you offer, and what insurance and local requirements apply. One recent UK industry estimate puts a solo setup around roughly £4,000 to £11,000. But that's an estimate, not a government set price. And that distinction matters. There is no single magic number that applies to everyone. You could start leaner, or you could spend much more on a professional van, larger equipment, water tanks, recovery systems, branding, and commercial-grade equipment. So the smart question isn't, how cheaply can I start? It's, what is the smallest professional setup I can operate safely and legally? That's a much better question. Pause. Now let's talk about making money. This is where social media gets dangerous. You'll see people saying things like, make thousands every week pressure washing. Maybe some operators do, but revenue is not profit. If you charge a customer $500, you didn't just make $500. You still have fuel, chemicals, maintenance, insurance, advertising, payment processing, taxes, equipment depreciation, and your own time. And if you hire someone, labor becomes another major cost. So don't build your business plan around somebody else's best month. Build it around your own realistic numbers. For example, imagine you eventually complete 4 jobs a week. Instead of asking, how much can I make? Ask, what is my average ticket? How long does each job take? What does each job cost me? How much do I spend getting that customer? And how much is actually left after expenses? That's the difference between watching business content and actually thinking like a business owner. So if you were starting from zero, here's the roadmap I'd follow. Step 1, choose a small service area. Don't try to cover an entire city on day 1. Step 2, choose 2 or 3 services you can actually perform well. Step 3, research your local competitors and figure out what customers are already paying for. Step 4, check your local business registration, licensing, insurance, tax, zoning, and wastewater requirements before taking paid jobs. Step 5, buy only the equipment you need for those initial services. Step 6, create a simple professional presence online. You don't need a giant office. You need a way for people to understand what you do, see your work, contact you, and trust you. And step 7, track every dollar or every pound, because if you don't know what one job costs you, you don't really know whether that job is profitable. And here's the part I really want you to remember. Pressure washing can be an accessible business because you don't necessarily need a storefront or a huge inventory. But accessible does not mean effortless. You still need skill. You need customer service. You need safe equipment handling. You need to protect other people's property. And you need to understand the regulations where you operate. The machine is only one part of the business. The real business is everything around the machine. So, could you start a pressure washing business with a few $1,000s? Potentially, yes. Could it cost much more? Absolutely. And whether it becomes a good business depends far more on your market, pricing, expenses, customer acquisition, and execution than on some viral income screenshot. That's the part most make-money videos leave out. If you're thinking about starting a business like this, don't start by buying the biggest pressure washer you can afford. Start by finding out what customers actually need, what your local rules allow, and what the numbers look like after every expense. Because the goal isn't just to start a business. The goal is to start one that can actually survive. And if you want more videos breaking down real businesses, real startup costs, and the practical steps behind them, stick around. Because sometimes the most valuable business idea isn't the one that sounds exciting. It's the one whose numbers actually make sense.